He was just a little boy, too young to understand the weight of the courtroom, yet brave enough to stand where grown men often crumble. His mother's future, her freedom, rested on his small shoulders. No lawyer by her side, no one willing to fight for her, except him. And when he looked the judge in the eye and declared the unthinkable, the entire room froze. What could a child possibly say that left even the most powerful men speechless? This is the story you were never meant to hear. Before that unforgettable day in court, he was just a boy like any other, small, curious, and full of questions about the world. His mother worked long hours cleaning offices, often coming home exhausted, but still finding the strength to smile for him. They didn't have much, but what they had was love, and for him, that was enough. School was his escape. Books became his friends, and learning gave him a kind of power no one could take away. But outside the classroom, life wasn't always kind. Neighbors whispered, teachers overlooked him, people who should have helped turned away. He saw the way the world treated his mother, how her voice was silenced, how her pain was ignored. Each day, he tucked these moments into his memory, not realizing they were preparing him for something far greater. Because one night, everything changed. His mother was accused of something she didn't do, and suddenly, the quiet life they had built was shattered. There were no lawyers rushing to her defense, no powerful friends stepping forward. It was just her, and her little boy watching helplessly. What could a child possibly do against a system built to silence people like them? No one knew then, not even him. But soon, the world would. The charges against his mother didn't come with mercy. They came with cruelty. A broken system had already written her story before she ever stepped into the courtroom. She was accused of theft, accused of dishonesty, accused of crimes she hadn't committed. And in a world where her skin color spoke louder than her truth, the odds were stacked higher than anyone could imagine. Her employer, a wealthy businessman, pointed fingers with ease. His word carried weight, hers carried nothing. Witnesses were scarce, evidence was thin, but that didn't matter. To the system, she was guilty until proven innocent. And who was going to stand up for a cleaning woman with no money, no influence, and no allies? Her boy watched the walls close in around her. He heard the whispers in the hallway, the cruel laughter of those who doubted her. He noticed how, even when she walked into the courthouse, people avoided her gaze, as if justice itself had already turned its back. He was too young to understand the language of law, but old enough to feel the sharp sting of injustice. Every night he lay awake, listening to his mother cry softly, trying to hide her fear. And every night he promised himself that somehow he would find a way to help. But how? What could a child possibly do? Then came the day of the trial. The courtroom was filled with eyes that doubted, eyes that judged. His mother sat alone at the defendant's table, no lawyer, no one to speak for her. The boy felt the silence press down like a weight. The judge called the case, voices echoed, papers shuffled. And just as the moment of truth arrived, when it seemed she would have to face it all alone, he stood. Gasps rippled across the room, a child, standing in a place reserved for trained men in suits. His voice trembled, but his courage burned brighter than his fear. He looked at the judge, at the accusers, at everyone who thought his mother had no defender. And then, in a moment no one saw coming, he declared words that would silence the room. "I'll be my mother's lawyer." The courtroom erupted in disbelief. Reporters scribbled furiously, onlookers leaned forward, and the judge stared in stunned silence. The boy's declaration wasn't just bold, it was impossible. Children didn't belong here. Children didn't fight against powerful men. Children weren't supposed to believe they could change anything. But he did. And as the eyes of the courtroom locked on him, one question lingered in the air. Could a boy with nothing but love for his mother possibly stand against a system built to destroy them both? The boy's words echoed like thunder in the silent courtroom. "I'll be my mother's lawyer." For a moment, no one moved. The judge leaned back in disbelief. The prosecutor smirked, and whispers rippled across the wooden benches. To many, it was laughable. To others, it was offensive. How dare a child challenge the order of the court? But the boy didn't back down. He stood taller, his small frame shaking but unbroken. He began speaking, not with legal terms or polished arguments, but with something far more powerful: truth. He spoke about his mother's sacrifices, about the long nights she worked to feed him, about how she was being punished not for a crime, but for the color of her skin and the poverty she could not escape. Each word carried weight, piercing through the layers of prejudice that filled the room. Some laughed, some scoffed, but others began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. He was too young to know court procedure, but he was old enough to recognize injustice when he saw it. The prosecutor pounded the table, demanding silence. The judge warned the boy to step down, but he refused. His voice grew stronger, fueled by every memory of his mother being dismissed, ignored, humiliated. And then, with tears burning in his eyes, he cried out, "If no one will fight for her, then I will." The room fell still. Even the judge, hardened by years of cases, could not look away. Reporters scribbled furiously, capturing every word. It was no longer just a trial, it was a reckoning. And in that instant, it was clear. This was no ordinary case, no ordinary child. This was the moment the world would be forced to choose: justice or silence. The courtroom never looked the same after that day. Though the boy's words didn't rewrite the law, they rewrote something far more important: the hearts of those who heard him. His courage forced the judge to pause, forced the prosecutor to falter, and forced everyone watching to confront a truth they had long ignored. Justice in America was never blind. It had always been looking through the wrong lens. For his mother, that moment meant she was no longer invisible. The world saw her not as a defendant, but as a mother worth fighting for. And though the case dragged on, though the system resisted change, the story of a little boy who stood up for his mom began to spread. Newspapers carried it, neighbors whispered it, and strangers drew strength from it. But beyond the headlines, beyond the shock of a child declaring himself a lawyer, the message was simple: silence protects no one. When the powerful abuse their place, it is often the smallest voices that remind us what justice should mean. That boy may have been just one child, but his act echoed louder than the gavel that tried to silence him. His story is not just about a single courtroom. It's about every place where racism decides outcomes before the truth is spoken. So the question remains: how many more mothers must stand alone? How many more children must carry burdens far heavier than their years? Because until the world chooses justice over silence, this story will repeat itself again and again. What will you do the next time it does?